RJ, do you even remember how to do any of this? Because I'm seriously questioning myself.
No, not really. I'm on a new computer right now that I've never used before to record. Yeah, it's been so long, man.
It is. It is.
Too long.
It has been definitely too long. Welcome everybody to a Red Glare podcast, a Stanley Cup Preview edition, coming out. Probably should have done this yesterday, but we'll get it out technically before the Stanley Cup Final begins tonight. Really excited for this matchup. We'll dig into that, and then we're going to dig into the coaching hires, or the one coaching hire and the coaching job offer as of now, with Tortorella and the Flyers, and then of course Bruce Cassidy being hired by the Vegas Golden Knights. We both have rants ready to go for coaching stuff, but we felt like, because today is the Cup Final, we got to start there. RJ, I mean, do we start with predictions or should we go through everything first? Let's go through everything first.
Yeah, let's go through here. Save the prediction for the end. Maybe we'll change each other's minds along the way. Who knows?
Yes. All right. Are the Avalanche doomed because they touched the trophy?
Well, Tampa did too, so
Yeah, but I feel like, Tampa, they've won the
yeah,
last
okay,
two
they've been
cups. It
here.
doesn't matter.
Right, right. As much as I want to say yes, it seems like teams are just kind of ignoring that superstition now, and it seems to be working. So I feel like there's not a whole lot to it. I know someone I saw on Twitter ran the numbers, and yes, you're like more likely if you do touch it, all that. I think it's probably going to be decided on the ice. The ghosts of that superstition are long gone, it seems like, but maybe they'll make a comeback.
Yeah, did you see it was going around on, I think it was Twitter, or it might have been Instagram, but somebody did like a lip reading of the Avalanche after they finished the series about like them all asking, hey, are you touching it? Like McKinnon's asking Landeskog, like, are you touched it? And he's like, I don't know. And this is like Rantanen asking like Eric Johnson, like, hey, are they gonna touch it? Like everybody's trying to figure out if they should touch it, and then they wait, and Sakic comes down to the bench out of the
Oh,
tunnel, and they all like flock over to him and they ask, and there's like this moment where you can see, and it looks like he just says, just touch the damn thing. And then they of course went out and
wow.
touched it, and then everybody, then it ends with clips of Sakic touching it back when the Avalanche won, his go through. So
Mm,
that would of course be
okay.
why he would say it. Had good luck with it back then. But it was an interesting thing. Like, yes, all these players going to Stanley Cup Final for the first time in their career, and the only thing they can talk about is, do we touch this trophy? Should we not touch this trophy? Where's dad? Let's ask him. You know what I mean? Like, that's basically what it was. It was funny and it was cute. Um, all right, let's start with the Avalanche, because the Lightning are kind of boring, just because, like, okay, yeah, a lot of people felt they were going to get here, and they were here. This Avalanche team, I brought it up last go around, and I brought it up when we were on Sports Beard not that long ago. That was a lot of fun, by the way. If you're watching, hey, um, is this just Colorado, figuring out how to win because they've lost? I brought up the idea that a lot of these cup winning teams that we've seen the last little bit have won after what their window was supposed to be, right? Crosby and Malkin, they were supposed to have won more cups before they finally did in 16 17. Ovechkin was supposed to have won long before he won. Even this Tampa group should have won cups supposedly, right, before they eventually won. And is it just that Coors, it just takes time for you to figure out how to find that next gear in the playoffs, how to play through those injuries, and in some cases maybe just have the injury bug like line up luck wise for you? Does that mean that this is the time for Colorado? They've lost. Some people, we're starting to write them off, you and me included, and so now it's their time.
As much as it feels like we should be able to confirm, yes, they're over that hump. They've figured things out playoff wise. They've learned from their past mistakes. I just don't think we can still say that for sure. I don't think this last round really shows you anything. No offense. The Oilers, even though you said they were your kind of team of destiny, I never really bought it,
Yeah.
but they were a deeply flawed team, and the
Mm-hmm.
Avs swept them as they should have. The Avs still haven't trailed in a series. We don't know how they will face adversity. The only way that they're really, I think, going to win the Stanley Cup is if they just never do. And against this Lightning team, you're going to get some pushback, right? I mean, then again, I've been saying this all playoffs. At a certain point, someone's going to give them a good punch in the mouth, and they're going to need to respond. It hasn't happened yet, and they're in the Cup final. Either they're just going to blow past the Lightning, or they're going to lose the series, I think. But I'm just not convinced that they've kind of learned from past years. I just haven't seen it yet.
Well, there you go, Ty, and all the fellow Avs fans listening. Avs Cup champs confirmed, because RJ said that every round so far, basically, and it's working really well for him. So
I've been doubting them all playoffs. Why stop now?
Exactly. When you have the opportunity to triple and quadruple down, you always have to take that. That's what history has shown us for everybody, right? It never goes bad for anyone. Yeah, I'm on the fence, like, because in a lot of ways I feel like I've come around on both of these teams, but I think I've come around on the Lightning a little bit more than the Avalanche. That said, I really like this Avalanche group. I've liked the lineup changes and stuff that they've been doing throughout this postseason. Like, yes, I know that they haven't trailed in a series, they haven't faced a ton of adversity, but I also feel like they're making moves before they have to. They're seeing the holes, and anytime, a team like the Oilers, even though they got through that series very easily, the few times the Oilers were giving them problems, they worked very, very quickly to address those problems and make sure that they shored up that. And I feel like that's a huge change from these Avs teams that we've seen in years past, where they were just like, hey, this worked through an 82 game regular season, or 56 game regular season, right? So we're just going to stick with it and play our game and try to do our thing. This Avs team is making changes. They're seeing, okay, this isn't working, let's change that up. That's an issue, let's make sure we address that. And I feel like that's huge, because those are the things that over the course of a long playoff run result in cups. That's the stuff that, we'll talk about it later when we talk about the coaches. That's what John Cooper and that's what the Lightning do that make them win, is they make changes. They're not afraid to shake things up come playoff time, series by series, game by game, if that's what it takes to win that game, because that's your only immediate focus, should be winning each game individually. And I feel like this Avalanche group is doing that. And so I have a lot more faith in them now than I ever have before.
And I will say, Jared Bednar's been bolder than I remember. Like, how about healthy scratching Andre Burakovsky?
Yes.
As you're still kind of winning and again haven't trailed in a series, that's a key player for you there. And it's something I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more about as we approach the free agency thing, talking about the Kraken. But, Andre Burakovsky, healthy scratch to bring in like a Nicholas Aube-Kubel. That's a bold move.
It is.
And it's paid off for him.
It is. That's what I was saying. I just feel like there's a little bit more going on with this group right now as far as figuring those things out. I guess let's talk about the Avalanche's. Their forwards still, for me, is what this is all going to come down to. Kadri, like, do we know? Like, I was trying to figure this out. I still can't figure out where he's at.
No, I can't. I mean, like, we're going to find out anything, given that it's the Cup final. I mean, teams are going to be as secretive as possible. We'll see him when we see him or not. But yeah, I mean, he had surgery, what was it, June 6th? So about 9 days ago.
Yeah.
I feel like we're going to see him just because it's the Cup final. And I never underestimate a team's ability to just kind of stitch a player up, hold him together with paper clips and duct tape, and get him out on the ice in a situation like this. Whether that's a good thing or not, we can, discuss later. But I feel like they're going to find a way to make it work, especially because it's an upper body injury. It's not like it's limiting his skating or something. I don't know. Just put the hand in a cast and send him out there.
I was going to say, you say that, but we've seen players get like rods inserted into their legs so that they could go out and play the Stanley Cup final. So like, was that Killorn?
Yeah, that might not even
stop. So like, we've seen broken legs not be an issue somehow before. So that's the only reason why I bring up Kadri and whether or not we'll see him. That being said, I kind of like the way the Avs have changed around losing him. Like, I kind of like the group that they've got going on right now. I love seeing Nichushkin playing with Landeskog and McKinnon. Like, that line is going to give the Lightning so many problems.
Absolutely. I mean, Nichushkin, it's so fun to see him working on that line with those guys. Another guy we'll talk about quite a bit, in future weeks when we get to free agency.
Yes.
But man, just, the way that he plays his two-way game, and then how he can play with such skilled players too. It's really a joy to see. And credit also to JT Compher, I want to say, for filling in on that Kadri spot. It's one of those opportunity knocks type of things, and he's really stepped up.
Yeah, and even Rantanen, filling in down the middle and stuff. Like, they're really figuring it out, and that's like I said, something we haven't seen from them in the past, and that's why I am more, I don't want to say hopeful, because I don't really have anybody in this fight, but why I believe a little bit more in them than in years past. The thing with Nichushkin playing with the other two is I feel like he's providing time and space in a way that I don't feel like Rantanen ever did for Landeskog and McKinnon, because Nichushkin, like, while they're both big guys, Rantanen and Nichushkin plays in a way that, an opposing defense has to account for him physically, right?
Right.
Rantanen's going to play a little bit more skill based. He's going to crash the net and stuff. He's very much a north-south player, but I don't know. I don't feel like he's drawing a ton of defensive coverage to him wherever he is, the way Nichushkin is right now, and the way Nichushkin's getting to the net and causing havoc right in front of opposing goaltenders and stuff. And I feel like that's something that we haven't seen McKinnon really get to play with, arguably ever, like at the NHL level. And so I'm very intrigued to see how, like, kind of the net front battles and stuff between Victor Hedman and Valeri Nichushkin, because I feel like that could be one of those things that decides stuff 5-on-5 for these teams in this series.
Right. I think there's going to be a lot of play that's in the Tampa zone, and they're going to have to try and bend but not break as these guys are cycling all around him. And you're right. Nichushkin, whether he's able to get to the inside against a guy like Hedman, could make a big difference there.
Yeah, or just the fact that Hedman's essentially going to have to be taken out of the rest of the play to account for that one player. Getting a 1-to-1 trade-off with Victor Hedman is a win. No matter who it takes,
you got against him, pretty much.
Exactly. So it's a win for you. So it'll be very interesting to see. And then it'll be interesting to see, for me, the Colorado power play against this Tampa PK, because the Rangers doing a ton of damage with their power play against Tampa, but then Tampa started shoring things up a little bit there. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. As far as the defensive pairings go for the Avalanche, this is where I think their weakness is going to be. I feel like this group has kind of played a little bit above their weight. So, some guys in particular, Manson. Do you think that can continue in this series, or do you think this is where they're going to finally be tested and some of that bend don't break is going to start disappearing?
I think maybe a little bit. I was actually, that was the thing that I was most impressed with in the series against the Oilers, because as deeply flawed of a team as the Oilers are, they are really good offensively. We've seen that in every series for them, and no team prior had been able to shut them down quite like the Avs did. And you look at teams like Calgary, you'd expect Calgary to be able to shut down that Oilers team. They just could not do it. They were helpless. But the Avs actually managed to shut them down, and I was impressed with that, because the Oilers are no slouch offensively. Even with Leon Draisaitl just kind of hobbling around out there, they were able to slow down Connor McDavid. Weren't able to stop him completely, but they were actually able to slow him down. I think they're going to see a different type of attack from Tampa. A much more balanced attack, and they attack in a very different way than the Oilers do too. Systems wise. So I think it'll be an adjustment. I do worry for the Avs about guys like maybe a Josh Manson, where he had some good games. He had some very bad games. You look at game 1 against Edmonton. I think he was just about personally responsible for 4 of the goals against. Yeah. He has a habit of kind of being exposed, having guys get behind him. And I think Tampa's got the forwards to really take advantage of that. So I think they won't get completely exposed maybe we would have thought a round ago. But I think it will be a little bit less of a dominant performance than against Edmonton.
The thing that's going to be interesting for me is I look at this and yeah, I think they'll do an okay job weathering the storm against the big lines of Tampa, the Stamkos, Kucherov, Palat, that kind of stuff. Even the Hagel, Cirelli, Killorn line. I think their issues are going to be with the depth lines of Tampa. How's this defense going to stand up against Paul, Colton, Perry, or Belmar and Maroon? Because those are the ones where I feel like those are smart players on the Tampa side. Those are guys that know how to just come right at you, hit you in the mouth if they need to, or they're really good at working. Corey Perry. Has there ever been anybody better at just slipping behind a defense and that defense having zero idea that he's there? You know what I mean? And I feel like those are the things that are going to give this defense fits, because you're probably not going to want to be putting your Taves Makar pairing out there against them. You want to save them for other opportunities and other matchups. But I just think, we've seen those lines for Tampa do damage against every team they've played so far this postseason. And I think they're just going to feast against these lower defensive pairings for the Avalanche.
Yeah, I could certainly see that.
Yeah, especially looking at, the Byram Manson pairing for the Avalanche, 26% expected goals for. Ugh.
Yeah, it's tough
brutal.
Because the loss of Sam Girard has just been so hard on them, because you've had to give those other guys more minutes.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's been rough, so it'll be interesting to see there. I guess I kind of talked about the Tampa depth there. What do you want to focus on when it comes to Tampa Bay?
I mean, we're moving on to the Lightning?
Well, yeah, no, we could.
I have one more thing.
Yeah, go for it.
Who's starting in goal for the Avs?
Well, apparently it's Darcy Kemper, according to Twitter.
Okay. Do you think that's the right call? Because I think this deserves some discussion here.
Yes, I do think it's
given the Avs goalie situation.
I do think.
Do you think that's the right call? Would you stick with Francouz? He hasn't lost a game.
I know, yeah, but he hasn't looked like crazy super solid to me either at times. Like, he's looked like a backup, and I just feel like this is one of those Stanley Cup final. You got to go with your, even if it's just your 1A, you always got to lead with that guy.
Yeah, and I do agree. I mean, I've talked to you in the past about how I don't think Francouz is. I think he's a mid-tier backup, but he did impress me with that shutout against the Oilers. I don't know. When it comes to the Cup final, it's so volatile. It's literally just about winning the next however many games. Yes. You kind of have to throw all that other stuff out the window. We've seen goalies, come in where they don't have a whole lot of experience, but they're the best guy right then and there. Mm-hmm. It's just really tough for me to take a goalie out when he hasn't lost yet.
I know. It's just, if all the games had looked like that shutout, I would agree with you. And I would say Francouz, but without that, no, you got to go Kemper, I think. Yeah. And really, Kemper's like, his goals saved per game above expected. It's not bad this postseason. Like, he hasn't. No, he hasn't been bad either. I think that was one of those, they got the feeling of, that was their series to ride the backup goaltender through, rest your starter, get him healthy, get him ready. They didn't feel like they needed him. If they started losing games to the Oilers, they would have switched back to Kemper immediately. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's the right move. You start with Kemper, and if things go bad in this game, then you just make the switch for the rest of the series. I think it's one of those, once you make the switch in the final, you got to stick with it. I don't think you can keep flip-flopping back
one goal to the other to the other. It's not going to work out for you.
I don't think you could piecemeal it. I think it's one of those, like, if tonight goes disastrously, you can switch, and then if you get to a game 6 or 7, maybe then you go back. You can make another switch if things again necessitate it. But I've got no problem starting off on this foot with the guy who in a lot of ways got you here.
Yeah, no, and you could go either way with it. It'll be interesting to see how it works out.
Yeah. Now, if I'm the Lightning, I'd rest Vasilevsky, but that's just me.
Yes, of course. I know you've been saying he's going to have a bad series at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess that could be my thing to just quadruple down on. I do feel like watching him this postseason, there have been times where he's looked like the Vasilevsky of playoffs past. There's also been times where he has looked very questionable. There's been multiple, like the start of that Rangers series, like everybody on the Discord, which, by the way, thank you everybody for supporting, and it's been a lot of fun on the Discord. We haven't done one of these since that's launched. But where people were like, oh, is this the round? You know what I mean? Like, we've seen a lot more questionable games from him this postseason than we have the last two.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And I think the Rangers really exposed the whole high blocker spot. That was something that people were talking a lot about during that series. And the Avs, that they can get into positions where they can kind of pick their spot. And they've got the accurate shooters to do that if they get to those areas. So Vasilevsky's got to, kind of shore up that spot, whether it's cheating a little bit more to the blocker side or, whatever he has to do. It seems like the book on him is out. He's very tough to beat, but if you can actually pinpoint your shot, that, it could be an area where the Avs, have some opening.
The other thing is, I think, just keep him moving. Like, the more you're having to force him to go cross crease and make desperation saves, that is just going to wear him out. And it's been wearing him out. Like, the fact that he's had all these long postseason runs and everything, like, just try to get his legs tired if you can. And I think the Avalanche are capable of doing that if they want to. And then just get Nichushkin in front, like we were saying earlier. That's still the best way to beat any goalie. If you're on the right
spot for a rebound, there's nothing the goalie can do.
Yeah, best way to beat any goaltender is, don't let them see the puck, maybe. At the end of the day, hockey doesn't need to be a complicated game. All right, so the Lightning. We just talked about Vasilevsky. Again, until he breaks at this point, I'm kind of on board with everybody else. He's, you can just count on him until he gives you a reason not to. Forward-wise, I kind of talked about it earlier. Their depth just continues to amaze, the way they can just recycle the bottom six of their lineup, with the exception of Maroon, who's just going to win cups forever and win playoff series forever, with 15 straight now for him. It's just absolutely incredible. There's no reason for me not to look at this and say, yeah, forward advantage Lightning. The top guys have totally rebounded from the Leaf series. I feel like Stamkos is back. I feel like Kucherov's back. Palat's been great this year.
Yep. And Braden Point is literally back. He's back in the lineup.
Yeah. So I look at this group and I just go, you know what? They're as dangerous as ever.
Yeah, they really are. It's amazing how they've been able to refresh the bottom six almost entirely too. Have we gotten a chance to rave about Nick Paul yet?
No, we have a little bit, just because he was like, the hero a couple times for them, like getting through the Leafs and stuff. We've talked about him. I guess one thing I will point out about that, like Paul, Perry, Colton line is it feels very different than the Yanni Gourde line that they had been using in years past. It feels like that line has more of a focus on offense. Like they're structured and they're not going to let too much damage happen defensively too. But I feel like this is the first time where I've looked at this Tampa team and said, you know what? They have 3 attacking lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they will keep you on your toes defensively. The way they cycle the puck in the offensive zone, they will take the offense to you. Whereas I think, the Gord Coleman line often was a very bend but don't break, and then kind of quick strike.
Yes.
But the Paul, Colton Perry line, they are going to cycle in your zone. They're going to spend the whole shift in your zone and make you defend. And it's really just remarkable to see, with Nick Paul's size, Perry's kind of slipperiness, Ross Colton. I mean, he's got a heck of a shot.
Yeah.
He doesn't use it very often, but he's got a great shot. It provides this different dynamic. It's so amazing how they've been able to kind of create this stuff, from scratch. Julien Brisebois, hats off to him. And how about like Nick Paul? When that trade was made at the deadline, no one was really making any big deal about it. I know a lot of like Senators fans would say, "Yeah, good luck. He's not that good." I remember that. Like, oh, we got Matthew Joseph. This is better,
Yeah.
But Paul's just been awesome. I didn't watch a ton of him with the Senators, but he's this legit 3C and a very good one. I mean, and as his upcoming UFA, I think he's kind of playing his way out of Tampa as far as their ability to afford to keep him.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that is going to be Tampa's issue at post this season. Like, this very much feels like, okay, this is like, we thought last year was going to be the off season where it was like, all right, we'll see if they can survive. This one is the one. It's going to be like, okay, we'll see if they can survive as this top tier team after this one. But yeah, he's been fantastic. What I love the most about him is how aggressive he is at attacking the net. Look at any of the goals he's been scoring, especially the big time ones. It's him and the goaltender. There is no defenseman between him and the netminder. You know what I mean? Like, he is attacking the net. He's right there for him, and it's it's awesome to see. And that's one of those things that, again, with this line, yes, they can cycle it. Talked about Perry getting behind the defense, but the way he just kind of, he sees these opportunities coming and then he'll pounce on them before anybody else can. It's really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. So forward depth, I think it's tough. We got to say advantage Tampa, right?
Yeah, in my mind, it's advantage Tampa. Just the fact that, I mean, last game, right? Like Stamkos, Kucherov, Palat was like their third line. Like,
incredible.
It's just wild. All right, so that's that. Defense. Probably advantage defense for Tampa too. I feel like they've just gotten better and better as the postseason's gone on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked in one of these earlier ones, the first round, about, how Mikhail Sergachev just didn't seem focused and he was kind of out of it. And we thought he was kind of a liability early on. And then, of course, he's got this huge game against the Rangers, scoring a couple goals, from the point. It's everyone has kind of gotten everything together. And, Chernak, always solid. Victor Hedman, I mean, what more can you say about him? He's doing what he's doing. But yeah, I mean, just a solid 1 through 6, 1 through 7, really.
Yes.
The Tampa D's just been getting better.
Yeah, we've talked about McDonough before. I love all the stuff he does, the nuances he brings. I really think he's an underrated or underappreciated aspect of these Tampa wins and defense. It's easy to give all the praise to Hedman because he is so good. But I think Ryan McDonough has been very good for them. Chernak, like you said, Sergachev, Bogosian, right? Like, it's incredible. Like, the names just go on forever. How
about that move from Zach Bogosian on the goal against the Rangers? He hasn't done that since juniors.
No, there's no way. Like, go back anywhere in the history of Zach Bogosian, because I've been watching him play for a very, very long time. I remember his Thrashers days. You know what I mean? Like, that didn't exist. That stuff. It's incredible how solid they are, and they just it's just certain fundamentals too that they just all share, which is do whatever it takes to keep the puck in the offensive zone. Okay, the puck's out of the offensive zone. We failed at that. Just make it hard for, stand at your own blue line, make it hard for them to enter the zone. Okay, they somehow get past that. All right, just keep them to the corners. And they just like run through that checklist in their head, all of them. All 7 guys, like, you can just see the process in their head go, like, okay, we're going to do that. We're going to try to hold the line here. Okay, they broke through. Don't panic. We've got a next, barrier for them to have to get through. And it just grinds on you trying to get through that. You have to essentially get through them 4 times before you've actually beaten them.
Yeah, and once you get into a position to actually shoot the puck, you've got waves of bodies in the shooting lane.
Yeah.
Before it even gets to Vasilevsky, probably the best goalie in the world. It's a lot to deal with. And I know the Avs have made things look easy so far in this postseason, but I don't know how anyone makes beating that Tampa team look easy. So you've got to think it's going to be somewhat of a struggle.
Yeah, I think the one thing that has continued to give Tampa problems has been quick transitions. Because if you can blow through the first 2 or 3 levels of defense there, of those like kind of set checkpoints that Tampa wants to make you go through, that's when things start getting interesting. Those are the only times I've seen them play with any sort of like, it looks like their heart rate might be a little elevated there. Right. I don't, they never look panicked. That's the one thing I will say about them ever. But those are the only times where it looks like, okay, they're actually trying to like get back and figure things out here, is when teams attack them quickly. I think still the best example of that was in the Toronto series. I think Toronto was best at that. But those first 2 games against the Rangers were very, very good at doing that. Now, the way Tampa adjusted was, okay, let's just slow the game down. And then they can't do that, and let's just have our forwards, work on the cycle game in the offensive zone, and it'll slow the Rangers down. It'll limit their opportunities to break out against us. So, Cooper, we'll talk again about coaching later. That's a way of dealing with that issue. But again, if the Avalanche can figure out ways of being aggressive in transition and forcing this defense back, forcing them not to be able to set up in the points where they want to set up, that's really your only hope of beating them, in my mind.
Yeah, Agreed. And I'm glad you mentioned game 1 and 2 against the Rangers too, because we saw a little bit of that. But of course, they were able to adjust.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do it over the course of a full series.
Yeah, so that's why who would have thought we'd be interested in this like Bednar v Cooper, who can make the better adjustments over the course of a series. Like that is not at all what I would be thinking we'd be talking about if, because like this matchup isn't a wild and crazy matchup to be imagining, but that is not at all what I thought I'd be paying the most attention to, and yet very much that's what I'm going to be paying attention to, because both teams have gotten here in large part because of the adjustments they've made along the way.
Agreed, and shows how important coaching is.
It really, really does. So it's going to be interesting. Does special teams worry you for Tampa?
Not particularly. I think their power play. What have been their power play numbers this postseason?
It's been steadily getting better to the point where they're just at their regular season numbers. It's like 24%.
Okay, that's what it seemed like. It seems like it was really bad to start with, and then they've just kind of gone back to what it normally is.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're not as bad as they were at the start of the postseason, so it doesn't really worry me. Got to make sure you kind of stay out of the box. You can't be feeding the Avs power plays. Mm-hmm. No team can afford to do that. But I don't think they will. I think they're disciplined enough to avoid that.
Yeah. What's going to be their answer for Cale Makar? Because that's the one that interests me, right? We've seen Cale Makar, when he takes over games, he gets the puck, he takes a couple steps forward, then a couple steps to his left or whatever to get into the slot, and just nobody can stop him from doing that. What is the answer for Tampa to try to slow that down?
In defense.
Yeah.
And but it seems like a very simple answer, but if you have multiple guys, skating back, like a guy like Anthony Cirelli, I think is someone that, underrated. I think, he's not underrated. He's getting Selke votes. Yeah. People realize now how good he is defensively. But I think, a guy like that can keep good tabs on Makar. And you talked about the fundamentals that their defensemen have too. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get beat, single-handedly on these plays. He's not going to walk any of these defensemen. Just keeping that structure, keeping him to the outside. It's tough. Like a player like Cale Makar, you can only hope to contain him. Yeah. But I think Tampa's got as good a shot as anyone of doing that.
This is where I'm intrigued by Braden Point.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, because I think that's going to be the interesting matchup potentially.
Can't he skate with them though, given the injury?
Braden Point seems like the kind of guy who's going to do whatever it takes to play that. But like he's one of those guys, like when you see him skate down pucks like aggressive offensively, right? Like he's beating and icing back. Like the guy sells out for everything he does. You know what I mean? So I think
agree completely. The last thing I remember seeing from him is him trying to sell out completely and just cannot finish the shift.
Yeah.
So we'll see if he's able to hold it together.
I think the fact that we've seen him out for as long as we saw him out and everything, I think they were being extra careful with him because they felt like they could and they were able to.
Right, because they had spots where they would have been pretty desperate to play him against the Rangers.
Yes.
Seems obviously like, oh yeah, of course they won that series, but it was in question for a while.
Right. And then now they finished that series so strong. I feel like if there was any concerns with him, you could start game 1 of this series without him and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Like Tampa's kind of done that through all of these series anyways. Let's just see how it goes, and then we'll just make adjustments and we'll be fine after that. So I feel like they could have done that too. So it'll be interesting to see.
I love that attitude from Tampa, and like it so clearly emanates from John Cooper.
It does.
If you've watched like any of his, also the in-game interviews too, when they talk to him for a sec or whatever, they're down 2-0, against Rangers very early. He's like, oh yeah, no, we're fine. I mean, like look at the first goal. We just let him like walk right into our zone. Like we don't play like that. I'm not worried.
Yeah.
like that was terrible. I know that's not who we are.
Yeah.
It's great to watch. He's so calm.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic. In my mind, he's the absolute gold standard for what a modern NHL coach should be. I mean, he was like that through the whole Toronto series.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're going to play our game and we'll be fine. Yeah, like if ever there was a time for anybody in that organization to be panicking, it was that moment, because it was like, okay, as we talked about earlier, this is like maybe your last year to really try to do this, and certainly you're going to cement yourself as the only team to win 3 straight in the cap era and all that stuff. And they were just like, the whole time it was just like, nope, we're good. Hey, the bad things, that's on us. It's not them. Like, they never once gave Toronto power at all in their minds. And that was absolutely incredible. It was just everything was their own fault. And so as long as we fix that, we'll be fine. And sure enough, they were. It's awesome.
Love it.
Anything you want to talk about with Tampa? I kind of drove the boat there on that one.
No, I mean, I think we covered it pretty well. I mean, you let me hop in and, talk about the forwards, the defense, all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're getting ready to get to some picks. I think people want to hear what we think will be the result.
All right. Do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first.
Okay.
I'll take Tampa in 6.
Okay.
Like I said, I will quadruple down on doubting the Avs here. But I do think obviously they'll be a good opponent for Tampa. Lightning aren't going to sweep them or anything. I wouldn't be surprised if the Avs take the first couple games even. For me, it could even look a lot like the Rangers series potentially, where the Avs, they're very skilled team. Tampa's kind of got this feeling out process with their opponents, it seems like. But I think ultimately they'll adjust and they'll by the end of the series, I think it'll look pretty convincing that Tampa's just going to keep winning the games.
Yeah, I think I'm really on the fence on this one because I think Tampa will win, but I almost want to say the Avs will win just to then make Tampa win, like
right.
just based on like the last round. I think that this is going to go. These first 2 games are going to be really close. I think that I could see something happening where Tampa wins game 1, Colorado wins games 2 and 3. Like I think this series, one of 2 ways, is going to end with the Avalanche up 2-1. It's going to start that way. In my mind, whether it's Avalanche take games 1 and 2 or they take 1 and 3. I just think the Avalanche at some point are going to have, after a little bit of a sample size, a foothold of this series. I think after that, though, Tampa's just going to do their Tampa thing, and they're just going to be like, hey, you know what? We've come this far. Like, we pushed ourselves to get here again, you know what I mean? For a reason, we'll just do it that extra little bit. The fact that watching Tampa after they won the Eastern Conference, and they were just, like, relaxed, and they didn't look tired at all, and nobody looked hurt, and Kucherov immediately stopped smiling. You know what I mean? Like, no, like it felt like they had just ended game 43 of the regular season. And that to me is scary because that just means that they know they're not done yet, and they more than anybody knows what they still have to do. And I just think you cannot beat experience like that when you have the depth that they also have to go along with it. So Tampa in 6 or 7. Let's say 7. Let's make it exciting. We deserve it.
There you go. Can't have an identical pick. Can't pick exactly what I did.
We as hockey fans deserve it.
Hey, you know what? It's a good pick. You started off the playoffs with the Tampa in 7 prediction over Toronto. You were right. You'll close it out with Tampa in 7.
Yeah, let's go. And if us doing that means Colorado won, then you know what? Cool. Good for them.
I'd be fine with that. As far as what I'm actually, rooting for, I'd be totally fine with that.
Yeah, me too. I there's basically like no one in either of these teams that I'm like, I don't want that person to win or anything. So it's kind of nice in that regard. Just relax and watch what should be a fun final. All right. So we've talked for nearly 40 minutes now. RJ, you ready to go on some long rants about NHL coaches just endlessly being recycled? Because that's what's happening. Again.
Come on, recycling is good, Dylan.
I know it really
Environment.
does. Yeah. What's the percentage? It's only like 16% or whatever of things that we recycle actually are recycled.
Yeah, we won't get into that, but it's true. Yeah.
All right, let's start with Bruce Cassidy being hired by Vegas because that is the one that is like done. Like that's actually happened. What are your thoughts on this? Because I know a lot of people seem surprised when Boston let him go. I think it makes sense for Boston kind of entering this new era of questions, and we're going to have to go through a rebuild that we've been putting off for a decade, potentially. I think it makes sense that Boston let him go. I think he's a good but not great coach. I will say, though, I think Vegas is the perfect destination for him. And I think you probably feel the same.
Yeah. Yes, I do. And it's a great hire for Vegas, and I think you're right. If Boston wants to go that kind of rebuild direction, have more of a development coach in there, probably the right move for them. I mean, Jay Leach has even been in conversations, for that job, and if they do hire him, that signals very clearly what they're doing.
Yes.
Going forward as the former Providence Bruins head coach. But yeah, Vegas benefits though. I mean, it's a move where it makes sense for Boston and it makes sense for Vegas. You look at them firing Peter DeBoer. Once you've done that, you have a number of options in the coaching carousel. I think Cassidy was probably the second best option short of Barry Trotz. And I think Vegas either didn't want to wait around for Trotz to make a decision or probably had a feeling that he was going to go elsewhere. It's tough to land that top dog in the coaching, carousel every year. But I think Cassidy was the next best option for them. And if you can get him, locked in right away, I think it's a great hire. You mentioned this on the Discord yesterday, I think. It means they're going to probably try and tighten up a bit defensively, and I think that was one of their big problems last season was the way they defended, was not as tough to play against as in past years. And that's one of the things that Vegas had done so well is, especially when they had a lead, just being able to shut everything down against them. It just made them really difficult to play against. And they'd gotten away from that. And whether that was players not really buying into, because DeBoer is capable of that as a coach. He really is, of having a team that plays like that. But whether it's the message that wore off or whether it was the injuries, personnel, whatever, Bruce Cassidy should really be able to get them back on track there. You look at his, defensive numbers, the analytics in Boston, just excellent every single season that he's there. And I know he had Patrice Bergeron, but it's not just that.
Yeah, no, suffocating is the word that comes to mind.
There you go.
When you look at them. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a different way of shutting things down and tightening things up than DeBoer. We talked a lot about that when DeBoer was let go, just the style of it and everything. I think Cassidy does it in a little bit more of a traditional way. We'll say as far as getting his guys to play defensively. My question is kind of the Bergeron question. Like, it's really easy to do that when you have Bergeron and you have a roster built around that idea.
Right.
Vegas, it isn't a roster entirely built around that idea the way Boston was. You have guys that are, you've got Jack Eichel as your 1C now. Like, he's capable of playing defense and stuff, but at some point you kind of want to let him go offensively. That's the reason you got him, right?
And he doesn't really like to necessarily.
Yeah, yes. So, like, there are questions as far as roster construction and how that's going to go. And my other thing is, like, the guy leading your defensive charge is Mark Stone, who's a fantastic defensive player, best defensive winger in the league, best person you could want from the wing doing that. But I'm mentioning twice now, it's from the wing. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have that Bergeron down the middle guy who is going to just suffocate you when you're in their zone, because he's just kind of there in the middle as this presence that you just can't do anything around. You know what I mean? Like, there's just this 5-foot radius that's a black hole when you're playing against a guy like Bergeron, and I don't see who that's gonna be on this Vegas Golden Knights roster.
As far as centers, they just don't have it right now. But Mark Stone, I think it's going to answer a lot of very interesting questions, kind of X's and O's wise. I think it's something a lot of coaches should take note of, what Cassidy decides to do there. Because if you're Cassidy, you're looking at, right, I don't have Patrice Bergeron anymore, but I've still got the best defensive winger in the NHL. How do I utilize him to, make my team as good defensively as it was in Boston? And I'm no head coach. I'm no NHL coach, but I feel like there's got to be ways that you can do that if you think creatively, and work some things out. You're kind of more the X's and O's guy still, and it'll be interesting to see kind of your take on what they end up doing. But you've got enough there, I think, to make it work. As far as, depth down the lineup, I think you've got some good guys in the bottom six who can play well defensively.
Yes.
And then, how are you going to use Mark Stone? And Stone is a very skilled player and a very smart player too. I think he can handle, if you want to make some adjustments or kind of have him slide into the middle of the ice or whatever you want to do. I think he's the kind of guy that can handle that.
Yeah, I think he can handle that. And I was going to say one place I would look, and this I know for might sound crazy, would be Seattle, because we saw them kind of do that, where like, okay, in the defensive zone, a winger is going to kind of be playing the traditional center spot defensively. Like we saw that a couple times with like Jared McCann and stuff when he was on the wing, but then he'd slide over to the middle in their own zone. I just think that there is a transition process to doing that each time you do it, and it opens up windows of opportunity for the opposing team. I don't think that it's a reliable strategy that you want to count on game in, game out kind of thing. Do you think we see a different Chandler Stevenson because of this? Do you think he becomes the guy that they try to do that with? I mean, he just kind of had his offensive breakout, and I don't know that the analytics would support him being able to do it. But when I look at the roster as a whole, I'm kind of like, that might be the guy they try to.
Maybe. I mean, it's not something we've really seen from him a whole lot in the past. No, William Karlsson. I'm trying to think who else they have at center.
Marchessault could do it, maybe. But like, again,
I mean, if you want to double down on just having it from the wings, then maybe Marchessault.
Yeah.
They have guys who are capable of being solid defensively, but that's how this whole Golden Knights team was built. They kind of tried to take advantage of a market inefficiency there and really build their skill from the wings out, which is generally cheaper to acquire than centers. Centers are very expensive, very tough to acquire, and that's where you bring in a Chandler Stevenson, really cheap, but you bring in the wingers, Mark Stone, Marchessault, that they can play with, and it works. So you got to think Cassidy, if he takes this job, has got to be on board with that, or have some ideas about how he's going to make it work.
Yeah, either that, or maybe this is how we see the career resurgence of Nolan Patrick. Is he just turns into some defensive kind of guy that's, and that's what it is. I doubt it, but we'll see.
It's a long shot, but hey, you brought it up, so if it happens, you heard it here first.
Exactly. Do you think that this coaching change is going to get them to the promised land? Because I don't.
Oh man, asking me, are the Vegas Golden Knights going to win the Stanley Cup? Every year I pick them.
Here's your chance to septuple down on it, RJ.
I will take that chance. Yes, it will. No, I think it is a smart coaching hire. I think he can. It gives them every opportunity. I think it puts them back. If everyone can stay healthy, because there's the big if, of course.
Yeah.
If you have the injuries you had last season, no, you're not getting that far. But if everyone can stay healthy, I think I liked enough what I saw from Jack Eichel, who's just still getting back into things. I think that all the pieces are there for them to get right back to their conference final every year type selves. And if you get that far, I mean, who knows? You've got a shot.
Yeah. The reason I don't think it's going to is for the thing that we talked about with the two coaches who are in the finals now. What adjustments is he going to make come playoff time? Because he wasn't very good at doing that in the postseason for the Bruins. Certainly not the last couple years. You know what I mean? Like, I just look at this and I go, okay, I do believe in this defensive structure. I believe that they have the wingers to make it happen and some personnel, and it's obviously one of the deepest and best rosters in the league. There's just so much talent there. I believe in all of those aspects of it. I just look at it and I go, okay, they're for sure playoff team, assuming everyone's healthy. Like, so much had to go against them for them to miss the playoffs this year. Like a lot. They're going to be a perennial playoff team under Cassidy. They're going to win rounds under Cassidy. But I look at it and I just go, when stuff hits the fan, or when you run into a really good team, or you run into certain situations, is he going to be capable of making adjustments? Is he going to be able to say, hey, you know what? I think the way to win this series is to just make it a shootout, and we're just gonna open things up and try to win with speed and transitions and all this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he'll ever be the guy who's gonna say, hey, yeah, let's just do that. You know what I mean? And I think at the end of the day, that's just gonna do them in year after year.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna go as far as the system takes them, I think. But I think it's capable of potentially taking them all the way. And hey, look at Cassidy this year in the playoffs, undefeated with last change.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that part of that is just
Carolina
just does that to you too. So
yeah, maybe that's probably a function of playing Carolina.
I look at his career track record in the postseason, and outside of 18-19, when obviously Boston was very, very close to winning it all,
Yes.
there's just not much there to be like, wow, that was great. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you had a really talented team 2 years after that, and you got out of the first round and then did nothing. And then this year, like all you had to do was win one game on the road, just with one. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of, I look at it and I go, wow, this is going to be a really solid team. It's going to be a playoff team. They're going to win first rounds, and I think all bets are off.
Hey, they're going to do so well in the regular season, they won't have to win a game on the road.
That's true, maybe. And if they win one Stanley Cup and that's the year that they do it, all right. I won't feel like I was wrong. Let's put it that way.
There we go.
The last thing I'll just say is it's also all going to come down to Leonard for them and the system. Like, this could either be a real boon for Leonard, or it just won't matter because Leonard's not going to be up for it.
Yeah, that's going to be huge. Whenever you have a system that's kind of built around defense, around shot suppression, you need the goalie to play their part.
Yeah.
And Leonard, first of all, needs to get healthy, and then, just needs to gel with the system, and it'll take some time to see if that works out or not.
Yeah. All right. So I started off talking about Cassidy, talking about the Bruins letting him go because they're entering, a difficult period with a lot of tough questions about, do you kind of try to rebuild? Do you try to retool? What are you doing? You got this aging core. You don't have a ton as far as things moving up your system coming in to replace that aging core and your aging stars. From one team dealing with those questions to another team dealing with those questions in an even bigger way, the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, I'm working on this mock draft for this year, and I looked at them, and I looked at their current NHL team and what they were able to do this year, and I looked at their last couple drafts and what their prospect pool looks like, and I said to myself, whatever coach they hire is gone in 2 to 3 years, along with Chuck Fletcher, because this team is going to suck for the next 2 or 3 years, regardless of anything they do, because they don't have the pieces now, and there is nobody coming that is going to be a savior for them either. So it struck me as interesting to hear that they have offered their head coaching job to John Tortorella.
I mean, you know what? When you're in a position like that, where roster construction wise, it's bleak. There's not a whole lot to work with. Sometimes you swing for the fences, and that's certainly what the Flyers have decided to do here. And if you're Chuck Fletcher, why not? I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, you look at the roster construction. There are so many problems. This is a team that kind of needs to tear down and just build a solid foundation that's capable of getting you to the playoffs and being a contender, because this team just does not have it right now. We've seen Torts able to, make something better than the sum of its parts.
Yep.
I guess they're hoping that Fletcher, at least, probably hoping that he can at least make them a playoff team somehow and save his job.
Yeah. I think if you're Chuck Fletcher, the game plan here is pretty obvious. I'm going to hire Tortorella because he will get us to the playoffs, not this year, but probably the next year, just because that's what Tortorella does. He can drag any team to the playoffs just through the system and grinding things out. And it buys you, that one playoff appearance will buy you maybe the couple extra years you need for, if you kick things off now, drafting well, better than the Flyers have drafted the last several years. You can kind of make things happen, and if you're Chuck Fletcher, you can see your plan come to fruition. I don't know that it's gonna happen that way. We'll find out. But I look at this and I just go, okay, Torts is back. This is the ultimate level of coach recycling, which the NHL already loves to do, but here it is, just in a whole new way. Man, dude, I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, why not try to find the next guy? You know what I mean? Like I said, the next couple of years look bleak for your franchise. I understand that you'll just want a token playoff appearance to try to keep your job, all that kind of stuff. But this is the ultimate hire for me of the NHL will just continue to throw these guys out there until they're 70 and just want marginal results from it. And I just don't get it at all.
Yeah, in my mind, there's, maybe a top 10, and I think you'd argue this is too many,
Yes.
coaches that are maybe worth recycling, worth bringing in, multiple times because they're just that good of coaches. I'd say you're going to disagree with me, like Peter DeBoer might be one of them. I know he kind of keeps going recycling, and some of these Quenneville before, all that stuff came to light, he was another one that kept getting jobs, where those top tier of coaches that it makes sense, but it goes so much further than that when you have a guy, John Tortorella, keeps getting jobs. I mean, let's see. I mean, Peter Laviolette,
He was the other one, Alain Vigneault. Like,
yeah, Alain Vigneault, that's another, and they just keep being talked about.
mm-hmm.
At a certain point, you know what you're getting, and it's not elite. There's so many good coaches. I mean, I was listening to I think it was either the Jeff Merrick show or 32 Thoughts, but Merrick and Friedman were just talking about it. There are so many good potential NHL coaches. I mean, you could have at least like 64 of them. You could have every coach in the league just go away. You could easily fill up the league and have leftover, potential coaches where you could see something great. And if you have a team, why not take that chance when there's such a talent pool in the coaching ranks right now? Why go back to someone who is just going to be okay?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. I understand the wanting to play it safe. All these teams, especially in the NHL more so than other sports, just because of how much smaller it is as a whole. The ownership always wants the safer option, the one that is going to mean that they're going to be a playoff-ish team every year, because then, hey, I can get a round or two of playoff, box office receipts coming in, and it could be the difference between operating at a loss versus not, you know what I mean, over the course of a year, especially after, the way the national TV deal came up at the worst possible time for the NHL. I understand that line of thinking, but this is also a league in which 50% of every team every year makes the playoffs. You're telling me you can't find some new, more exciting coach that might be able to come up with something new that can't also just drag your team to be a top half team? Like it doesn't take that much really in the NHL to be to make the playoffs once every 3 or 4 years. You know what I mean? Like you almost have to be actively working against it for it not to happen to you. So I don't even understand it from that standpoint of just trying to play it safe and go that route, because you don't really have to play it that safe. The system's designed to play it safe for you in a lot of ways. So
exactly. And it's something that was, drilled home. You talk about half the teams make the playoffs. And this is something I was looking at when doing that, Gaudreau Forsberg article. Like, I guess like what percentage of teams who finish in the bottom 3 of the NHL make the playoffs the very next season? It's almost 20%.
Yeah.
It's 1 out of 5. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And I'm sure if you look at that 2 years out, it's probably at least 50% in my mind. Like,
yep.
it's gotta be high, because again, at the end of the day, just our random number generator, right? RNG in it, you got a 50% chance to make the playoffs every year just existing, almost. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. What are the odds that you could roll that 3 times and not have it happen? It's ridiculous. Yep. So the thing I will say is the other thing that bothers me is, we talked about it with the other guys and you kind of touched on it, making adjustments. That's the difference in my mind between the elite coaches and the coaches worth having around and the coaches who aren't worth having around. Tortorella, any of the guys that you just mentioned, they don't make adjustments. We see the same thing from them at every stop along the way. Bruce Boudreau, we see him, same thing every single time. And you know what it's resulted in? Nothing. No Stanley Cups. Tortorella at least has a Stanley Cup, but it happened 18 years ago. Okay? It's a Stanley Cup pre-04-05 lockout. It's a Stanley Cup pre-salary cap. So in my mind, that Stanley Cup shouldn't count for anything. Like, there's a statute of limitations in my mind of like, under the current modern day NHL, the fact that children born after that Stanley Cup was won will be voting this fall in the midterm elections tells you that Stanley Cup happened so long ago that maybe we should throw it out almost as an outlier, if anything. Because especially looking at his playoff overall win percentage, you could definitely say that was an outlier looking at Tortorella's overall success rate there. So I just, it just bugs me so much that they do this, because I just look at it and I'm like, okay, we've seen it now more than ever in the day and age of the salary cap. The coaches that win Stanley Cups are the coaches that make adjustments. I've talked about it recently. Cooper, by far and away the best coach at doing this. And guess what? He's on his way to potentially winning his third straight. You look at Barry Trotz, we've talked about with the Capitals. Finally came in there, was a guy, made adjustments. They win the Stanley Cup that year. You know what I mean? They made a lot of adjustments even in that playoffs. Even in that Cup final against Vegas, they were making adjustments to get through that series. You can see that. Mike Sullivan with the Penguins, I've talked about, loves to make adjustments. They make so many adjustments, maybe sometimes too many, but he's making adjustments, and they won Stanley Cups. Go back to Quenneville with Chicago. They were making it. All three of those cup winning teams looked very different from each other, and they all managed to make it happen because he knew how to make it work with the pieces he had those specific years. Sutter with the Kings. Those two cups look very, very different from each other because of the adjustments that he was making. The coaches that make adjustments win. The coaches that don't make adjustments don't win. And I know you like the guys like Gallant and like DeBoer. They have not won. They don't make enough adjustments. Gallant's big adjustment. I'm gonna scratch Capo Caco. Like, wow.
Not his brightest moment. I will say.
Elite right there, buddy. You know what I mean? Like. That's at the end of the day, you just have to do that. If you're not going to do that, if you're going to just run your system out there and think that it's going to work against the best teams for 4 straight rounds, you're insane, because all the evidence shows that it won't. And by hiring and recycling these guys who continue to do that, you're saying as a front office, as an ownership group, that you're not understanding that, and that, you know, you're the definition of insanity at that point. You're insane is basically what you're saying, because I'm just going to go with this guy who is incapable of making changes because I'm incapable of making changes, and my fan base will just suffer because of it.
You know, I was going to just add on to that, but I think like that was pretty perfect as far as winning. You're insane.
You're insane. Yeah.
You are the definition of insanity. I do certainly agree with you on this point. I might expand the list of names, you know, that might be worth it a little bit. You know, obviously taking the shots at Gallant and DeBoer. I think they don't make adjustments as much as those other coaches. But I think that's certain guys whose systems are strong enough. And also I'm big into, you know, the whole motivation aspect too, and the, you know, getting team in the right mindset. And I think that's where those guys excel. Of course that wears out, as you've seen. That has a shelf life.
Well, I was going to say, John Tortorella gets guys in the right mindset to be a playoff team when they shouldn't be a playoff team, but he's not going to win a cup that way.
Yeah, I'd argue Gallant and DeBoer have that right playoff mindset, that once you get there, you face adversity well and all that kind of thing. You know, they're not necessarily the guys that'll make you a playoff team when you're not. As we saw certainly, you know, with DeBoer and, you know, his last season with the Sharks or with the Golden Knights, you know, that's not his job. Yeah,
but I mean, you know, like Cooper, we just talked about him. I mean, he gets guys in the right mindset. Like, he's never panicked, so his guys are never. You know what I mean? Like,
he's got everything. He makes adjustments. He's got the right mindset.
Yeah.
He's got everything.
Yeah.
And you know, if you do have a vacancy, I understand. Yeah, try and find the guy who has everything.
Yeah. I just think, as a general rule, like let's try to come up with this rule for recycling. Okay.
Okay.
I think as a general rule, I want to see 2 things. One, I have no problem giving a guy a second chance at a head coaching spot. Like, I don't care how disastrous maybe if it's like super legit bad disaster the first go around, but I have no issues having somebody get a second chance, because you never know the situation with that one thing, especially if there's any time that's passed. Like, we talk about Bruce Cassidy, like he had 12 years between his first stint as an NHL head coach and then the second one. Yeah, that's enough time to say, like, hey, maybe in his mid-30s he wasn't there yet, but in his late 40s that's a different guy, and it's time. I have no problem with guys getting second chances, so I don't have issues with those recycles. I want to say, if they haven't won a Stanley Cup with their last job past that, don't recycle them, because it means that the game has probably passed them by.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a decent rule. I think, again, if you get to a cup final, if you're a game away from winning a Stanley Cup, that sort of thing. I mean, you look at Cassidy. He didn't win a Stanley Cup, in his, or you mean the last job before that, or like.
No, I would say
Caps,
I would say yeah, I know. Under my rule, I would say yes, Cassidy isn't worth recycling.
Okay. Yeah, I would. No, I would look at circumstance. If you're a game away from winning the Stanley Cup, I would take that into account. Certain things like that. Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm trying to think of how to expand this to include Pete DeBoer. Really, that's where you get it.
That's what it's all about. It's just the one guy. But like otherwise,
gymnastics.
Yeah, because otherwise you might as well just try to find the next John Cooper or the next Mike Sullivan or the next Barry Trotz or whoever. Like, because your odds of making the playoffs every year, like your odds of winning the Stanley Cup every year are about the same no matter what anyway, right? Like only one team can do it. If your roster's at a certain point, only one team can do it. You're in that spot anyway. So that's why I say that, because you might as well try to bring in guys that are more used to the fact that, hey, all rosters are built around analytics now, or the fact that, hey, analytics are driving how we're making certain decisions, or hey, we have the technology to allow us to make adjustments mid-period. Forget about just waiting till intermissions or doing them mid-game at all. You can do them mid-period now more than ever before, because every coach, we're seeing them all the time. Every stoppage, they're staring down at their feet because they're watching things on the monitors. You know what I mean? They all of that stuff exists now. So I would much rather take a flyer on a new coach who has grown up thinking that way, playing that way, or whatever, growing up with those realities around them, than somebody who hasn't won a Stanley Cup in 10 years, and that was 1 or 2 jobs ago.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And you talking about the in-period adjustments, even made me think of like even a Jay Woodcroft, someone from a less traditional coaching background. He was a former video coach.
Exactly.
He's the first former video coach to, I think, coach in the Stanley Cup playoffs as a head coach.
Yeah.
Like that's great. That's a different perspective, and I think the success there showed as far as making adjustments. He was certainly always looking at the video because he was a former video coach.
Right. I wanted to bring him up, actually. Thank you for reminding me, because I thought he did an amazing job. The Oilers get through that Kings series because of the mid-series and mid-game adjustments he was making. They get through Calgary because of the adjustments he was making. That Colorado series, I do think, is entirely different if Leon Draisaitl is healthy. You know what I mean? I don't think they're getting swept because he's going to be capable of doing things. So I do think, I think it's time to start looking at guys like that, because that's where the game has gone.
Yes, and I do agree with you, certainly. It's about time that more names and different from varying backgrounds, get a chance at head coaching jobs. And I think the teams that are brave enough to go ahead and do that, you shouldn't even call it brave at this point, because you just look at the data. It's smart. But the teams that are the first to do that, I think will get rewarded immensely for it.
Yeah, and not everyone's going to be a hit, right? You're going to call up young coaches and they're just not going to have it. Like, that's fine. But you're doing that with these guys.
But you're back where you would have been after 2 years of Tortorella anyway.
Exactly. So, and again, maybe this is a weird one to bring it up because, like I said, the Flyers are kind of screwed no matter what they do, just given the state of everything.
In their circumstance, it does kind of actually make sense.
Sense, but
yeah.
But overall, it's one of those things. And yeah, I've talked about this for a long time. That's why I wanted Dallas Eakins back, and I thought he was going to do great stuff with the Ducks. And you know what? It hasn't worked out that way. So I will admit when it doesn't work, and even guys that I thought were going to work didn't work. But I just still think on a whole it's better than just going back to the same group of guys. Like, at some point they're going to age out. Like I said, Tortorella's in his 60s. Boudreaux's got to be in his 60s, right? Like, some of these guys, they are getting legit old. At what point do you just not go, hey, you know what? 88-year-old Scotty Bowman, we at least know you'll win a Stanley Cup. Like, you know what I mean? Like, at some point you just run into these issues. So, yeah, that's my rant.
Always enjoy these rants with you, Dylan.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait till we do an analytics one, because that's been giving me fits here for a little while.
Ooh, that'll be fun.
Yes.
No, I'm very much looking forward to that.
As much as I'm forward thinking about all this coaching stuff, I can't wait to sound like a dinosaur for talking about over-reliance on analytics. But we'll do
this
that.
Is gonna be great.
We'll do that on a different thing. We've passed the hour mark on this one. I think this was good. Looking forward to the game tonight. Should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to the series as a whole. Do you have a prediction for the game tonight? I guess we could end on that. We kind of talked about it. You thought?
Yeah, and I did mention I could see like the Avs, winning, but also they've had so much time off. Yeah. I don't know what to expect.
I don't either.
With this much time off, I don't know. I'm no prediction for me tonight. I'm just gonna sit back, watch, and enjoy, as every neutral fan should do in the Cup final.
All right, I just flipped a piece of cork because I don't have a coin, but it said Avs are gonna win tonight. So.
All right, cork has spoken.
Avs are gonna win. All right, thanks everybody for joining us for this episode of the Red Glare podcast. Yeah, I think we've covered everything. So we'll see y'all next time.